I'm Aaron. I am the mentor for this fun little mentorship group. Um, you'll notice there are 5 names on the slide and only 4 of us. One of our members for this presentation could not make it. However, he so graciously recorded videos for his slides, so be forewarned. Otherwise, just a quick overview before I pass it over to my mentees. This mentorship group was talking about what is a SIEM and what is Splunk. For those of you who don't know what Splunk is, we'll get into that. The goal of this mentorship group was for them to gain the prerequisite knowledge in order to become certified. So the information that is being passed along to you is everything that they learned in preparation to become a certified Splunk core user. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. They've worked very hard on this. So in that case.
Hi, everyone. I'm Witten. I'm a first-year cybersecurity student here. I'm from Connecticut, mainly. I love board games. I love shapes and colors, which means these little objects. If you've ever seen those cubes that fold into a million different shapes, I'm obsessed with them. I like skiing. I like tennis. I like swimming. And yeah. Zifeng is not here right now. He's the one who will be coming in later. He's a great guy. Also first year, also likes badminton and always napping. I wouldn't be surprised if he was napping right now, but I know he's busy.
I don't think he's gonna play the audio. Oh, lol, guys, his videos don't work.
Okay, the guy who's coming in over video, his audio doesn't work, so we'll just rehash his slides.
Yeah,
But you know, there's his lovely face talking.
Hi everyone, I am Emmalee Carpenter. I'm a second year BSMS student. I'm from Amsterdam, New York. Probably no one knows where that is. It's near Albany. That's the capital of New York. And I am a dog person. I also love chonks, as you will see in this photo. I have 4 of them. That's how much I love them.
I have a mic. Hi, I'm Anushka. I'm from Long Island. Oh, just kidding, I'm moving. Oh, yay, Long Island. So I'm from Long Island. I'm a second year cyber BSMS student. Actually, that's a lie. I dropped masters like a week ago. My favorite activities include eating. I will sleep anywhere. There's a photo of me sleeping on a table and a couch right there. One of my favorites. And I have a dog. Her name's Layla. This is not my dog. This is my best friend's dog. I just put on there because he represents my constant state here. Yeah, that's me. So throughout the presentation, we're gonna go through some of our modules that we learned through Splunk. They include Intro to Splunk, using fields, scheduling reports and alerts, visualizations, dashboards, working with time, statistical processing, leveraging lookups and subsearches, and search optimization.
So you might be asking, what actually is Splunk? However, to answer that question, I should tell you Splunk is a SIEM. Now, if you don't know what a SIEM is, you're probably wondering, what is a SIEM? So SIEM stands for Security Information and Event Management. It is real-time logging of data. It ingests a bunch of data, filters through it to all the important stuff, and allows you to query it and set up alerts so that when certain triggers that you've set up with your rules and filters, you'll be alerted. And you're able to then query that data further and drill down and see why that alert went off and all sorts of other fun things. Oh, this is.
I'm just gonna read off this thing, I guess. Yeah, okay. So again, what is Splunk? Well, Splunk SIEM is developed by Splunk Technology, which is a sub-company under Cisco. It has a variety of features that will assist you in making machine data available, accessible, and usable, whether you're IT ops, DevOps, or SecOps. Why Splunk, you might be wondering? That's because it saves time and resources for both administrators and clients, which will be shown in the later slides.
Oh, it's playing his video. Okay, well, I will read this one. So, this is also a Zifeng slide. I'm so sad that he made these videos and they're not gonna play. Anyways, so I'm gonna read off his speaker notes. Let's start with the first unit, Intro to Splunk. The very first thing we want to introduce is the Splunk Index. So the Splunk Index is a central repository that stores data collected from servers, web apps, and other internet-related devices/services. All of the Splunk functionalities that are provided work around the central index. So now you might ask, what functionalities are there? There are 4 major ones that users work around with, which are searches, reports, alerts, and dashboards, which will all be slides later that will go into more detail. But the search functionality is like a Google search bar. You basically type in what you want to search for, specific events, such as failed login attempts, and it will pop up with the events that had a failed login attempt. Next is reports. They are saved searches in the form of charts and graphs based on machine data. The reports are created for the purpose of displaying data to non-technical users like a marketing team to show them the data that we have filtered. Then we have alerts, which are set warnings to administrators and other users, like Eva talked about. They can be set to trigger you at certain points, or they can be set to alert you every single time something happens. And then lastly, there are dashboards, which are a combination of PowerPoint and the reports that we just talked about. So they have visualizations on them, and they show all the data that we collected. Oh, his video is playing. Okay, so using fields was one of our second modules. So what the heck are fields, you might ask? Well, fields are knowledge objects. What the heck are knowledge objects, you might ask? Well, they're tools that discover and analyze data. So basically, you'll see a field in a searchable key value pair. So if you don't know what that means it's similar to a math equation where you'll see x equals 10. X will be the field, 10 will be the value. So it would be field on the left, then equal sign, and then value that you're searching for. So in this example, like status 404, the field is status and the value is 404. So when you're typing that into the search bar, you're looking for fields that have the status of 404. So some of the most common fields are host, source, and source type. You also can see in this picture that there's a selected fields area right here. It has the host, source, and source type because they're the most common. And then underneath it, there's an interesting fields section that has some of the most seen fields in the search or in the events. So you can take these interesting fields and put them into selected fields by like selecting them and putting them in, and they'll be here from now on, and then you'll see them underneath your events so that they're easier to see. And then if you see right here, these are search modes. So you can have 3 different ones. There's fast, verbose, and smart. So fast is prioritizing speed over completeness, and it will limit the type of data. So if you want a quick search, you put it on fast mode. If you want a search that prioritizes completeness over speed, you'll want to put it in verbose mode, and it will give you as much event information as possible, including every single field. And then for smart mode, that is the default right here, and it will balance the speed and completeness based on what you're searching for. So fields are a great way to filter results. So in the example I put, you see that the field name is client IP, and then the value is 192.168.1.2. So if you want to find a specific event that you know a client has interacted with, I guess, like if the client had failed login attempts, you'll want to filter on that client IP. And then if you want to filter by full name, like my full name, Emmalee Carpenter, and you want a space in it, you'll have to put double quotes around it. Field names are also case sensitive, so if you want to search for hosts with all lowercase, you're going to want to put all lowercase, and because if you put it in all capitals, it will not return stuff that you like. And then lastly, with fields, wildcards are very important to broaden your search for certain things that are similar but pretty general. So for example, username field equals admin and then asterisk, which is the wildcard. It will produce events that have a username with admin as the beginning word, and then anything after it, like administrator, admin123, so on. And then the comparison operators are pretty similar to any kind of coding language you've seen, so like Python, equals, not equals, less than or equal to, so on. And then the or, in, and not operators are pretty self-explanatory for similar to Python or any kind of coding language. And then the in function is a little different. It will find a field that is inside of a list. And then the rename command is really important. You can rename fields to be more meaningful. So especially if you're giving this data to a non-technical user, you're gonna wanna rename your commands to make them more user-friendly. And then the fields and the fields plus and the fields minus, all are commands that will either include the fields in your search or exclude them. And
So a big part of Splunk is our reports and alerts. Alerts are based on searches that run on real time or on scheduled intervals. Actually creating them, you can run a search and save it as alert, customize like what type of alert type you want, real time or scheduled, and you can set the trigger condition. There is a throttle setting that controls the number of notifications you get when the trigger conditions are met. As I said, there are two different types of alerts. There's real-time and scheduled. Real-time alerts are generally used for events that take priority, as they're more, well, they have a higher need to be looked at. They run in the background. They will notify you every time the trigger conditions are met. This is opposed to scheduled alerts, which come in the form of reports. They don't run in the background. Their throttle settings can be set to a number of times that trigger conditions are met, or they can be set to like a time interval. So you want to be like updated, like when a certain how many times an incident occurs within like a week or something. Scheduled alerts are really good for that. They take a backseat to real-time alerts because they're generally generally incidents that can be dealt with later. There are two advantages to having scheduled alerts as reports. One is obviously you have reduced demands on your system that you would otherwise have if you're running multiple concurrently running reports, real-time alerts. And a second is that you can make the report into a visualization and save it to a dashboard, which we will talk about later. Splunk has another feature called report embedding. Report embedding is basically where Splunk creates a URL that leads you to an outside website or application where you can see the report without actually needing to have access to Splunk. It's super useful when you want to show like users outside of your organization or your department certain statistics, certain like event logs, stuff like that.
So this is the part of Splunk that I really like. This is visualizations. This is the part where it gets really pretty because you take your query, you took all your raw data, you filtered it through all your rules and whatnot, and now you have like a big table of data, and you want it to look nice. So you turn it into anything you want, really. You can make bar charts, pie charts, like all sorts of things. You can even just upload this straight up table. Visualizations can really look like anything. Even this is a visualization. This is literally just one number and whether or not it's going up or down. But you can also put it on, like we were saying, dashboards, which we will talk about more later, so that you can have a bunch of data and make it, through these visualizations, very interactive. So you can click on things, drill down, and see why things are behaving the way they are, as long as you've configured the dashboard and visualizations to allow you to do that and update.
Sorry, I have one. So, as Eva was talking about, visualizations can be saved to a dashboard, and you might be thinking, like, why create dashboards? First of all, they're very pretty. Look how nice to organize. Look how many colors there are in this picture. But other than that, dashboards are really helpful for providing more context to a report. Like what? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different reports on this dashboard. Putting them all in one place gives each visualization a lot more context in terms of each other. It makes information more understandable, more useful. It's also more simplified for like explaining to lay people on what's happening security-wise in a company. Say like you're presenting metrics to like executives, you're not going to want to give them a whole report of just event logs. You're going to want something that they can understand. In terms of like actually creating dashboards, it's a good idea to wireframe before you actually make the dashboard. Wireframing is basically just creating a rough sketch of like what visualizations are going to go onto a dashboard, where you're going to put them, if you're going to have any interactive elements on there at all, which we will talk about. Actually creating dashboards, once you have that wireframe set up, you can either go to the dashboards menu, which is not on there, lol. You can go to the dashboards menu and create a new dashboard from there, or if you just want to straight up go into, like, you're making a search and you're like, oh, this would be a good thing to have on a dashboard, you can run the search, and instead of saving it as a report, you can save it as a new dashboard and configure the customization from there. There are two different types. There are two different types of dashboards. There's Classic and there's Studio. These two differ more, like mostly on their source code, how much coding knowledge is required for both of them, and just overall like layout. Classic requires more. Classic has XML source code. This one generally requires more coding knowledge because you're actually editing the code that defines the the dashboard. The layout is more row and column, so it's a bit more uniform. Studio, on the other hand, uses JSON source code. It requires less coding knowledge just because it's more GUI oriented. The format for this is more grid and absolute, which makes it more dynamic, more creative, and a lot easier to just like drag and drop a visualization somewhere. It does, however, have its own source code in case you wanted a source code editor for both. It's got the source code editor in here has different stanzas that define just the layout of the dashboard. They've got the different stanzas include stuff like data sources, visualizations, defaults, inputs, and layout, which correspond to those parts of the dashboard. Like I said, color coordinating is pretty important. You can coordinate visualizations with each other, or you can coordinate parts of visualizations with each other. You can assign colors to set values or make it dynamic and set it to a range instead, depending on what you want. Like in this one, this is more dynamic coloring because within like certain ranges for the room numbers, I believe this is. You can also provide input to dashboards, which I think is pretty cool. This is really helpful when you have, say, like a really big data set spanning over, like, say, a week. If you want to, like, zoom in on all the data that relates to Monday, you can configure it to have a drop-down that you can select, oh, I want the data that corresponds to Monday, and then the visualization will reconfigure itself to show data specifically to your chosen option. There can be multiple different forms of input. You can have text, drop-down, multi-select, text number, and time range. Super helpful. When using these inputs, whatever value you choose will get stored in a token, which is automatically generated. You can customize it, and it can be used to pass the value you chose to multiple visualizations. Another feature is that when you hover over visualizations, you get the information about that like particular spot, all the events that correlate to it, the statistics. You can configure the dashboard, however, to, like, when you click on it, run the search that generated that part of the visualization to show the data, which I think is pretty neat. So it would basically be just like, oh, like, I want to see what this part, like the red bar is. I press on it, and then it'll show you the search that gave you that visualization. Oh, okay, this is Zifeng's. Okay, well, next we have the working with time unit. This is one of the most annoying units to learn, but it's very, very helpful. An important thing to learn is the time field that in Splunk searches are displayed as Unix time, which is the number of seconds passed since January 1st, 1970. We don't use that, obviously, the computers do. But anyways, another thing to make sure is your time zone is configured correctly so you won't be seeing events happening at odd times and be confused of like why it doesn't match up. Oh, hello. Okay. Nope, that's not working either. Oh. Hold, please. Well, if you...
I got this, maybe.
Maybe.
Google Chrome for
Google Chrome for? Why are you using Google Chrome?
You're not judging. What are you doing?
Because this happened on Google Chrome. Zifeng's videos are just too goated.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, so great they crashed the presentation.
which side were we on?
Somewhere
This
with the
one.
talking times. Yeah, the next one.
Next one.
Okay, next one.
It doesn't. Sorry, it was the video that fucked it
What
up.
if it froze again though?
Yeah.
Reschedule the program.
We're so bad.
Okay, thank you.
We're so back.
Sorry, guys. Anyways, so the first thing to learn is the timeline, which is the histogram shaped figure right below the search bar. Oh, this thing? We can analyze this shape to determine when most events took place or drag to highlight a range of time blocks to filter for only events that happen within that range. This is very helpful when it comes to finding events such as mysteriously large number of sales or login failures. Switch the... Okay, cool. Next is a feature that works with the search bar, the timeline range. It is not the ideal case to work with all the data in the selected index, therefore picking timelines is very useful to work step by step. On the left, we can see that there are default times to pick from, such as events that happen in the last 24 hours, or real-time ones like during the current 5-minute window. If none of the default options match your needs, feel free to use the search bar to build your own time range using modifiers shown on the right. Another key thing to notice is modifiers love to round down the time, as you can see in the provided example, where when you're searching for events that happen in the last 30 minutes with minus 30 m at h, it takes you back all the way to 9 o'clock instead of 9:15. The next useful command is bin, which allows users to group events into lists based on their field values. The syntax is fairly simple. You can use the span field to group events based on time ranges and make each bin a hop by an hour, like the example below. Then it's the bin equals int field, which is how many bins you want to create. And lastly, the as new field part is for setting the name of the new field that stores the saved values. Lastly, Zifeng wanted to talk about time charts. This command allows you to create a visualization of a graph based on inputted fields now, and it graphs based on the count of events that happened on a certain time. But that can also be modified depending on what events you're making a time chart for. This is definitely more presentable than thousands of event blocks with specific but very, very irrelevant information to the person seeing it.
My turn. Okay. So statistical processing, never heard of her. Anyways, so oh my gosh. Statistical processing uses commands that perform calculations, collections, and transformations on event data. So some common commands are chart, time chart like we just heard about, top, rare, stats, count, and eval. So most of the time we use these types of commands to divide fields, by a value to make a measurement more user-friendly. So for example, if a field is in seconds, you'll want to divide that by 60 using the eval command, and you would get minutes. Okay, so some of the common, even more common statistical processing commands include stats, eval, and top/rare. So stats are, they calculate statistics as the name suggests, such as averages, counts, and sums. So often you'll see in Splunk searches a by clause, so the stats average bytes by status. So with that by clause, you'll get one row per status code. So the status, the by status, that's a status code, so every single status code you receive, you'll get information from it. And then without the by status, you'll only get one row that represents the entire average for all of the statuses. For the eval command, we talked about it a little bit with seconds and dividing that seconds by 60 to get minutes. So you can also use the if function in order to kind of make it like a switch or a case function. So you'll have status equals 200. So if an event has a status that equals 200, it will return in the new field the suman, and then it will keep doing it for each if that you add. It will overwrite if there is a pre-existing field. If it's already called new field, it will overwrite that one, or it will create a new one if there isn't one. And then for top/rare, when you use the top command, it will find the most common values for a field or field list, and then when you use rare, you'll find it will return the least common values. So in this example, it is finding the top product IDs, and it's only limiting it to 8. So when you use that limit command, it will only give you that many events.
So one of the more bothersome sections in my personal opinion, is leveraging lookups and subsearches. They are lookups and subsearches are tools that are very, very useful for reducing the load on the actual computer that's computing all of your data. Because what lookups do is you take a bunch of
We're done.
No, I'll keep going. Lookups, you take a bunch of data and you just put it into a
Okay, you want to repeat that last part because it wasn't caught on mic?
Oh, it wasn't caught on the mic? Yeah, I'll repeat it. Repeating what I just said because it wasn't caught on the mic. Lookups are just essentially lookups go to summary files instead of the full data so that you can have a much quicker and more efficient version of your search, even if it's not as verbose. It is much easier on the computer, but has to be pre-planned. Subsearches have this strange syntax where you indent and put in brackets searches from another database in order to take in some amount of data that you don't have in your current search that you need. And that's such as, lookups can also be pulled from a lot of different things, not just the TSIDX files. They can be CSVs, KV stores, and the external lookups was what I was talking about before. And I think that's it for Splunk.
Woo.
Any questions?
No questions yet.
The question was, did we go into the certification process yet? And if so, how did we do in the certifications? We have all been given vouchers to take the certification for free, the exam for free, and are now in the process of scheduling and taking those exams. So we haven't yet taken them, but are planning to soon, within the next month, most likely. Thank you.
Yes, we highly recommend joining the Splunk mentorship group if
Yeah.
it is offered again, so you can get a free voucher.
Very useful. Any other questions? Yes.
So, you talked a lot about what Splunk is and what you can do with the information. Can you give us an example of what this could be used, how this could be used in a workplace environment?
Oh, I can give this example. So, I would like to tell a story, actually. Sorry if you are bored. So, for a job interview, actually, I had to use Splunk for a challenge that was given to me. It was a lot of forensics. So, for Splunk, I was like 2 weeks into this mentorship group and I barely knew how to use it. But it was super easy to like kind of navigate through, honestly, chat and also strong willpower. Anyways, I had a little browser of Splunk, and the questions that the challenge was asking me related to failed password attempts or certain event IDs that I could look for in event logs through Windows. So what I did was I used Splunk in that scenario as a way to search for certain time frames that I knew that a threat actor was getting in, and I filtered on that using fields or the time range that we talked about, and then I was able to find the certain IP that was getting in to the system and hacking and doing all that stuff and failing the passwords. So in the terms of like in an actual workplace, you're finding things specifically for security in like breaking in from passwords, failed attempts, any type of logs. It's just such an easy way to filter certain events and certain time frames. So yeah, that was my story. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Cool. Thank you guys for listening.